But to talk about this guitar, we're gonna have to talk about this guitar. If you've seen any of my videos, you've probably seen this guitar. I recently noticed that I never really did a demo slash walkthrough of this guitar, even though it has showed up on pretty much every single song you've heard of mine, and most of my older videos. So leave in the comment section if you want to see a video all about this guitar. But long story short, this is my for life guitar. This is a Fender Tele with a one-piece rosewood neck made by Fender. It's not a custom shop, it's a regular production back when they used to do that range of the American standard guitars. It didn't really come relic, that was all me. And as soon as I got this guitar, I just immediately bonded with it. It just happened to be a very special guitar. I started out as a bass player, and even though I've never owned a 5-string, I've played many 5-strings over the years, and I always appreciated having access to that more piano range by having those extra lower notes. And as a composer who mostly uses the guitar to figure out ideas and compositions, I always thought it would be cool to have a 7-string guitar. Most 7-strings out there on the market are mostly modern 7-strings, and understandably so. It's mostly a metal music thing, so it's not surprising that the few brands who actually did a 7-string were more metal oriented, not only when it came to looks, but also when it came to specs. But look at me and my favorite guitar. This is not a metal guitar. Even if I have composed my songs mostly in the symphonic, instrumental, progressive rock genre, and I do enjoy some metally bits here and there and metal music in general, those are not really the sort of tones I gravitate towards to, nor the sort of specs that I've gravitated towards to over the years. And if you've never tried a 7-string guitar before, there are a couple of things that are a little bit different about playing a 7-string. Some people say that it ruins their shapes and their positions and the way they visualize the whole guitar. In my case, I've actually had experience with a bunch of 7-strings over the years that I've asked my friends to borrow from time to time. So in some ways I kinda knew what I wanted. I actually wanted a guitar with that extra range to do a little bit of a more chordal style of playing. Like, just imagine if I could be Yamando Costa but on the electric guitar. That would be crazy. Ultimate goals right there. And if I could just snap my fingers for a witch, I would have very heavily considered to just have this guitar sounding exactly as it does, but with an extra 7th string. I've had that idea of a more traditional 7th string, or at least a more traditional sounding 7th string, probably since like 2019 or 2020. And even back then I researched for brands that kind of did that sort of guitar, but I couldn't really find anything, or at least nothing that sparked any real interest in me. Maybe Vola guitars could be the closest that come to that sort of idea, but even them didn't really exactly have what I was looking for. And at the time, for the price that Vola guitars were going for, which by the way, I'm not saying they have an unjustified price, I'm just saying that for that price, they weren't really calling out to me, and aesthetically, their 7-string options aren't completely my thing. And if I spent a little more, I knew I could get a more custom guitar. I know there are brands like Kiesel and Balaguer that do custom guitars and could accommodate some of the specs that I wanted, which we'll get to in just a second. And obviously there are some great brands like Schecter or Sir that have made 7-string guitars throughout the years, even if not more on the traditional side, but there's plenty of specs that I know they would accommodate because I've actually contacted a couple of those brands throughout the years. But because I'm quite particular about specs, not only because I'm very nerdy when it comes to these things, but this is a very specific and peculiar guitar. I've had this guitar tested by many of my luthier friends and by many of my professional guitar playing friends, and I've had all sorts of weird reactions to some of the specs, to some of the sounds, and even from some guitar players who are like shreddy 80s humbucker guitar players who've never really enjoyed more traditional single-coil guitars, but then tried my Tele and were completely amazed. So when I started suggesting and asking for quotes, all the brands I've contacted, which were most of the brands that I've mentioned before and even some other brands, they either refused to do some of the specs that I asked for, or they started asking for values where you don't really want to do something, but you know that you can do it, but because you don't really want to do it, you're gonna ask an absurd price to make sure that it's worth your time. And honestly, I respect that, no issues at all. So I didn't really take anything any of these brands said in the wrong way. But if I'm going to spend my hard-to-earn money, then it better be exactly what I want, or at least pretty damn close to it. So from that point on, I can't really say I gave up on the idea, but it left me a bit discouraged until maybe a new guitar would come out that actually came close to some of the specs that I was looking for, even if I had to mod or alter that guitar a little bit. And even at that point, I had tried a bunch of amazing guitars over the years that all felt nice, but were for the most part not really things that I deeply connected with, so it stayed in the back burner of my head for a while. Thank you for watching this video. This is just a section of the bigger video of the review slash demo of my custom Rui Silva guitar. If you'd like to learn more about it, please click the full video, and consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, follow, and stay tuned for more.